Steve Baker, the journalist, surrendered today, and man, it is wild to see. They put the guy in handcuffs for no reason. The FBI charging documents over this journalist show that he was doing journalism. This is a crazy story. The Biden administration has ordered the arrest of an opposition journalist. What makes this story so wild, Steve Baker was at January 6th. It has been years, and he's not been charged. He was clearly recording. The charging documents outright describe him walking towards the Capitol, recording himself while narrating what is going on. And that's the description of everything he's doing. He is now an investigative reporter for The Blaze. It's a wild story. But something happened a few years later. He began investigating inconsistencies in testimony of Capitol police officers. And then, now he's being charged as if he is a rioter or January 6th participant. It's absolutely fascinating, but man, we did a really great show over on the Culture War podcast this morning about the Roman Empire. So I'm reluctant to say Biden is crossing the Rubicon because, figure of speech, it's not literal, or it's not even heavily literal in that this may be the point of no return, but it is a major, inflection point. It's not the first journalist we've seen, but this may be the first journalist who directly exposed lies and potential perjury being targeted, which in what appears to be retaliation, and they're misdemeanors. We're going to go through that. That's the big story here. We do have information on the Fani Willis hearing about disqualification, and then this is absolutely wild. We're now being told, here we go, corporate press, that if we don't actually go into Ukraine, then we'll have nuclear World War III. Whereas, obviously, if NATO were to actually send troops in Ukraine, you run that risk. Vladimir Putin warning, he has nukes and he will use them. What is the West thinking? We're going to talk about that before we do, my friends. Big news. Eyes of Advice, our first week out. And I said I was going to give $1,000 to whoever got closest to the description of what the video is about. I decided to give $2,000, and I commented on those posts. If you are one of those posters, I commented on them. It's the best way to get in touch. I gave you my email. You can reach out to me, and I will Venmo you or whatever, and I'll send you the cash, because a couple were the closest that I saw. I think one thing most people missed in the music video was the deal with the devil. While a lot of people pointed out correctly, drug addiction, social media are big components of this, and they all are. There's multiple layers to the music. So for those unfamiliar, we released a music video, Eyes of Advice. Had this, pseudo contest kind of thing. The general theme of the video, if you've watched it, it's on the nose. It's very obvious. There's a guy whose life is good and bright, and it's slowly decaying as he keeps going into this world. And then it turns out he's taking drugs. That's the overt and obvious, but there is the more subtle metaphor of the devil has offered him greatness. He's offered him this deal. Come into my world and I'll give you everything you could ever want. And then it ends up destroying his life. So shout out to the couple of people, 2 people instead of 1. And one person mentioned the symbolism of Christianity and the devil and Satan and the things they offer you. And the other person mentioned drugs and social media. I thought that was good. So thanks everybody. It was off the cuff. It wasn't planned. I hadn't planned a contest. I just saw everyone trying to speculate as to what they thought the meaning was. And I thought it'd be cool. So Eyes of Advice is the song. It is our most Shazam song. We are the #1 song in Edmonton in Canada. Rock on, Edmonton. Yeah. You guys rock. That's a million people in that city. That's huge.
Edmonton Oilers.
Wow, that's so cool. All right, everybody. But also, don't forget to go to castbrew.com. We sponsor ourselves. Pick up some Cast Brew coffee. We are, unfortunately, sold out of Appalachian Nights. It's wild how fast we are selling. I can't keep up. This is crazy. We got to order more. I can't believe I'm looking at now. Our coffee pods are sold out. Mr. Boca's Pumpkin Spice Experience still available in K-Pods. We got a promo code going out in our newsletter for the Re-Rise with Roberto Jr. You'll get 25% off 2 different bags. Just buy the coffee. Check out Stand Your Grounds. If you like Appalachian Nights, you will like Stand Your Grounds, the medium roast. But when you sponsor this or when you buy from us, castbrew.com, you're supporting our physical location, which March 5th, oh boy, Tuesday, live event, Martinsburg, West Virginia. We will see you there, sponsored by Good Ranchers. Dude, Good Ranchers is you go to their website, you pick a box, they send you a bunch of these farm fresh meats. Shout out, they sent us sample meats, and I had a burger, and it was a Wagyu burger, and it was basically like the best burger I've ever had. I mean, granted, I put grilled onions on it, mayo and cheese, but it was an amazing burger. And castbrew.com helps support the show. Also become a member at timcast.com to support our work. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and, I don't know, World War III is General Tony Tata.
Great to be with you, Tim.
Who are you and what do you do?
Tony Tata is my name. I'm retired Army Brigadier General, formerly performed the duties of Undersecretary of Defense for policy under President Trump in his last year there. Businessman, Secretary of Transportation for North Carolina, Superintendent of Wake County Public Schools in Raleigh, North Carolina, former Chief Operating Officer of D.C. Public Schools.
Wow.
And I also write novels, and I've got my 16th novel coming out this week, and Phalanx Code. And it's a story about, think the worst instincts of Google and Facebook and their digital carnivores trying to crush the little guy and deplatform people like, everybody sitting around this table and silence the voices. And you've got, think on the other side, maybe X and Musk trying to defend the little guy. And our hero, Garrett Sinclair, gets pulled into trying to help defeat the Phalanx Corporation, which has all these assassin squads out there trying to kill people like this team right here that are trying to speak truth to power.
Man, busy guy. 16?
16.
Wow.
That's the book over my shoulder is number 16.
Tell me in the book the guy falls to his knees and he's like, "Free the code!" Does he scream that? I've been screaming that for like 2 years.
Yeah, so in the story, the Phalanx Code is actually a kill list, right? That the Phalanx Corporation has encrypted of all the people in the Optimus project, think Musk and X, that are trying to do DeFi and DY and all of that, and trying to write the code to allow people to decentralize Wi-Fi, decentralize finance, and protect those people. And they're trying to break the Phalanx Code.
Cool.
So they can understand who's going to die next.
This is going to be fun. Thanks for hanging out. We got Phil Labonte.
All that stuff is great. They say that generals are, once you get to the general officers, like they're doing it because they want to coast. But you just sound busy as hell. Anyways, I'm Phil Labonte. I sing for the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary. Ian.
Oh, hello. Ian Crossland. Great to be here. We already did our intro, so let's keep moving. Serge.
Yeah, let's get to it. I'm Serge.com.
We also have an obscene amount of leap year candy. Basically, it's just blue and yellow packaged candies of different Butterfingers, Starbursts, and
I'm going to sound like I'm chewing all shells.
Just push the mic away. Don't eat candy in the mic. All right, here's the news. No more joking. This is wild. FBI charging documents in Steve Baker January 6th case show he was working as a journalist. Let's start from the beginning for anybody who doesn't know the context. What we're looking at right now is the Biden administration, it would seem, retaliating against a journalist for exposing inconsistencies in Capitol Police testimony. Let me give you the quick version. Steve Baker is a reporter. He's an investigative journalist. He works for The Blaze. He was working as a journalist, an independent journalist, on January 6th. I have personal friends of mine were there with him. He was there as a journalist. He was ignored by the feds and the Capitol Police. He was not considered a suspect for years until he started doing reporting on inconsistencies in statements made by certain individuals involved in this. I'm trying to be a little bit vague, but basically he's speaking out and exposing, as a journalist, corruption in government. All of a sudden, he gets a call, you're going to be charged. They play dirty games with him and then finally ordered him to surrender. Today, he surrendered. They put him in cuffs. This is where it gets wild. Now, I can tell you right here, the charging documents even show, and I'll show you all that, but I want to pull up a tweet here, which I don't know. Actually, I don't. Here we go. Daniel Horowitz says, as you watch them arrest Steve Baker, realize that last November, Jackson Green, a climate activist, attacked the Shaw 54th Regiment Memorial in the National Gallery of the Arts West Wing. Yet he was out on the streets undeterred to then paint bomb the exhibit of the sacred U.S. Constitution at the National Archives a few weeks ago. Two-tiered system doesn't begin to describe what is going on. Now take a look at this. In the charging documents, they actually say that he is walking around. I love this. From the exterior steps, he's walking around narrating and recording. FBI charging documents in the arrest of Blaze Media investigative journalist Steve Baker over his coverage of the January 6th protest and riot at the U.S. Capitol show that he was working as a journalist. Charging documents describe Baker working as a journalist while at the U.S. Capitol, The documents state that Baker had been video recording the event and providing commentary as to what had been occurring inside and outside the Capitol building. In figure 3 on page 4 of the charging document, it states, at approximately 1:19 p.m., Baker recorded his approach toward a double fence manned police line at the base of the West Plaza. Baker moved past a black damaged half fence onto steps leading up to the police positioned bicycle racks. In figure 10 on page 8, the FBI describes Baker as performing the actions of a journalist. This includes the federal agency referring to Baker as a narrator in a video that has been captured from both inside and outside the Capitol. In the video, Baker reports the events that had been occurring, specifically the police killing of conservative veteran Ashley Babbitt, the U.S. Capitol Police Department's response to the riot, and city officials announcing that a curfew had been set. Now let's just add one more layer to this. There are dozens of other journalists, some who were even with this guy as they were covering January 6th, who have not been charged, face no charges. In one instance, one individual doing the exact same thing in the exact same capacity didn't get charged. And the speculation is when he reported this, he called them insurrectionists. And by doing so, they said, okay, you're fine. You're good. But this guy's on the other side. He's an opposition journalist. He covers January 6th. He says, here's what's happening. They say, you're under arrest. You're an insurrectionist.
My outrage is no longer with the government doing these kind of things, because they've been doing them the entire time that President Biden has been in office. They've been doing them leading up to President Biden getting into office with the essentially opposition inside the government to President Trump and anything he was trying to get done. I am no longer outraged with the government. I am now outraged that people are accepting this, and not that there are not enough people standing up and saying this is going to literally ruin our country. Because if we cannot trust that our government can be trusted, at least generally, right? Like, now, if the government is dealing with a conservative, they are not going to be dealt with fairly. 100%. There is no doubt in anyone's mind. And if you do get treated fairly or get treated well, it becomes something worthy of making a remark about. Oh, wow, they actually were nice to him. Oh, wow, look, man, Kyle Rittenhouse got off. Amazing. No, it should have been plainly obvious, and he shouldn't have even been in jail. The idea that the government does not target and attack conservatives, anyone that isn't politically correct, essentially, like it is no longer acceptable to say, oh, we're angry with the government. It is now time to start looking at our fellow Americans and saying, why aren't you paying attention to this? Why are you allowing this? Why are you accepting this?
But I think that's not true. When we went over that story yesterday, they did a poll and found 65% of 18 to 24-year-olds believe that Donald Trump will shake up this country for the better. You look at the presidential polls, Trump is winning. It's an inversion from where we were 4 years ago. I think more and more people are actually paying attention. And the hope everyone has is, I think the far left extremists of this country are begging for someone to act a fool, to act out,
yes,
to help them destabilize the country.
100%.
And I think the people who are paying attention are listening to shows like this, or shows like, listening to people like Glenn Greenwald, Sticks, X and Hammer, Steven Crowder, and they know we have to muster up everything we can to win in November. And I want to stress this. I'm not going to sit here and play a game and say November is an election. November is the battlefield. It is political. It is political tactical warfare. This means you have to register as many voters as possible. You have to get your friends and family to vote. You have to, the RNC, which is failing, but people on the right who support Trump and or just any member of Congress opposing the machine, we need to be in the lawfare game 100%, filing every piece of paper. Now, the one thing that does have me worried is all of the court cases against Trump, and there's nothing in response.
Yeah.
So I certainly hope people are paying attention, because we need the lawfare on our side right now to get ready for what happens in November.
Yeah, and this is not the time to, maybe you're realizing what's going on is a little bit insane. No matter what political party you adhere to, you're like, what? Talking to your friends about it is not enough right now. You need to speak up publicly. These are the things that make people get in the street and riot, or you use your voice on the internet. Now we don't have to riot as much because we have internet video, so we can complain and protest on the internet. We don't have to form these dangerous mobs, but you got to be loud publicly about this right now if you want to be one of the ones that spoke up.
Yeah, I don't think this is complicated at all. The framers of the Constitution did not trust the government. They believed that we the people, had the right to hold the government accountable, and that's why they wrote the document, particularly about the free press. And right now, the press is not free if you're standing for freedom. There's a corporate press. They're not journalists. They're operatives. They're part of the influence operation that's going on right now. Baker and others, they're journalists actually trying to do what the framers of the Constitution intended for journalists to do, to hold accountable these governments, our government, the federal government, because corruption is rampant. And right now we've got the most corrupt federal government we've ever seen in our lifetime.
So you served in the Trump administration.
I did.
How long were you in the Army?
28 years.
It's a long time to serve your country, and now to have said what you just said, a corrupt federal government. I don't even know what the right question is. How does that feel? Like, what's your frame of mind?
So, how I feel, I try to capture it in some of the, this book behind me is in first person. And the big dilemma that I see for how I feel, and what I capture with Garrett Sinclair in the Phalanx Code, is that is everything that I have done, that Garrett Sinclair fictionally has done, losing people in combat, is it worth it? Was it worth it? After the Afghanistan folly that went, when everybody was on vacation, that 3 Augusts ago, and all of that unraveled so quickly. I had soldiers calling me that had served with me, crying, saying, "Serge, was this all in vain?" They broke a generation. This administration broke a generation of soldiers, 20 years of soldiers, rotating in and out of Afghanistan, believing that they're doing the duty that was asked of them to preserve and protect our nation. And this administration, this Secretary of Defense, this president abandoned those veterans by not holding anybody accountable for what transpired. And they fundamentally broke NATO, which I know we'll talk about in a little while.
Yeah, can you explain that? We were talking about that before the show, the breaking of NATO.
Yeah, so, when I was the undersecretary performing those duties, I always talked to my, Brit, French, other NATO counterparts that we had come in together to NATO or into Afghanistan as NATO. We adjusted together, and we were going to leave together whenever that was. And this administration, they just left. They did no coordination. They left 29 other partner nations, allied nations, to fend for themselves. And, Afghanistan is a big country with very poor infrastructure, and the Taliban was sweeping across. I know for a fact there was a lot of anger throughout many, many NATO nations. And so NATO was fundamentally broken coming out of Afghanistan. And so why do you think Biden and Blinken, et cetera, did nothing as Russia started moving to the border of Ukraine and through Belarus? What unifies any entity the best? And that's a common threat. And so in the wake of breaking NATO, they saw an opportunity, political craven opportunity, to do nothing. There was no engagement. There was no conversation. Russia just moved to the border. There was no, summit, try to intervene or stop it, because it brought NATO together with a common enemy. And then think about what happened at the very beginning of that war. Biden and Blinken offer Zelensky a ride out because their intelligence was so bad as it was in Afghanistan. And Zelensky said, "I don't need a ride out. I need ammo, man." And so think about that headline, though. If that had been Trump, it would have been, Trump offers to Putin to decapitate the Ukrainian government on the eve of invasion. Instead, these information operatives in the corporate media just let it go.
Let me pull up this story so we can get into the foreign policy stuff. We have this from express.co.uk. NATO warned that giving in to Vladimir Putin could spark nuclear World War III conflict. I love this because what we are being given by the press right now is no option.
Right.
If we give in to Putin, it's nuclear war, and if we win in Ukraine, it's nuclear war. So what are any of us supposed to be thinking right now? It seems like, okay, I guess World War III is an inevitability.
Well, the information operation going on right now is to get the Congress, to get the United States to support war in Ukraine, perhaps even boots on the ground.
But why?
Because there's this narrative out there that you gotta stop Putin. And the left has been successful in saying Putin is Trump, Trump is Putin. And so the more they can keep that alive, the more they can beat it over the head and shoulders of the American people for the next 9 months. And so that's what they're trying to tee up here. It's a craven political domestic move. It's got nothing to do with Ukraine. It's got nothing to do with Russia.
I'd say Biden is Putin right now after
totally.
having multiple journalists arrested. But I don't know if you can provide deeper insights. Perhaps why are we so why is NATO and the West so hell bent on taking Ukraine?
Yeah, so I come at this from a pretty a defense oriented thing. I say, what's our vital interest in Ukraine? Well, the vital interest is sort of secondary. Because it's the integrity of NATO that is the real U.S. vital interest in Western Europe. So Ukraine is somewhat threatening that. So let's make sure that we maintain the integrity of NATO. That doesn't mean go to war in Ukraine. That means doing all the diplomatic stuff you got to do, economic stuff you got to do. Yeah, maybe provide some military stuff. But you work it around the fringes, and you let that play out. And you can't have a conversation today like, where's the diplomacy? I was on some TV show, and the anchor snapped back at me when I said, hey, we got to sit down. We got to hammer out a deal. We got to do like we did in the Balkans with Clinton and Wes Clark, and draw a line in the sand here and bring in peacekeepers and all of that. And he snapped back at me and said, oh, so you just want to give Putin everything? I'm like, well, why was there not this cacophony of BS when Obama let Russia have Crimea? Was that the more flexibility after the election comment?
Right.
And so what's the issue now that it's, potential is, and it's all about Trump is Putin, Putin is Trump. That's the lie that they got to keep going because they're running on fumes into this election year. And I just got to tell you that the squandering of resources, the potential brinksmanship that's going on here is all based in domestic politics. Like, let's shift over to Hamas and in Israel. I mean, what's Biden doing in Michigan? Right? He's trying to win the Muslim vote. And he's trying to get Netanyahu not to get his hostages back. He's trying to...
There are American... This is something that people forget or ignore or whatever. There are still Americans over there, too.
Yeah,
like
roger that.
There are Americans that are still being held hostage. So anyone that says, ceasefire now, you're literally saying ceasefire and bargain with the terrorists that currently hold Americans hostage. This is insane.
Yeah, so we gave $6 billion for 6 hostages, and now there are more Americans held hostage by Iran proxies than before the $6 billion.
Unreal.
My attitude is America first. I don't care about what Israel does or wants to do. I don't care about Gaza. Everyone's saying, oh, it's genocide or whatever. You had that airman who lit himself on fire. And I'm like, we're the United States. Okay? Let's secure our border. Let's bring back jobs. Let's help the people of this country who are working hard every day and wondering why they can't pay their bills. And if there are Americans being held hostage, we rescue them.
Right.
I like the American first mentality, but with the caveat of at what cost? Because if it's going to be like we're going to level everything around us to dust in order to be put ourselves, that's not the way to go.
That's
first.
so extreme.
Exactly.
But to even present the idea is so extreme. It's to be unrealistic. Like, no, American. We're not going to be like, let's just nuke everybody that's not America because we're America first. Like, that's ridiculous. That's.
I would hope that we wouldn't invade foreign
We got
countries.
the nukes. We got to use them.
I mean, do they have an expiration date? Damn it, we better not waste them. That's a joke. It's a joke. Calm down.
So some guy in the military is just like, this nuke's going to go bad in a month. We got to fire it off.
I know that they put expiration dates on body armor so that way they buy new body armor because that stuff doesn't go bad unless you leave it in the sun.
My thoughts with Putin and the war in the Ukraine, what I've been trying to figure out is why, firstly, they took Crimea. I think what they're trying to do is take those freeways, East 97 and 105, that go down into Crimea and establish like a land bridge east of the
They did.
Donetsk. So then Putin goes on this Tucker Carlson interview and he's like, Ukraine is part of Russia from ancient times, and I don't know if he said it needs to be reunified, but he's indicating like a greater reunification war, which is more like Hitler. I never thought that was the case. I thought it was pure economics. They want that seaport.
Tucker said in the intro to the interview that he believes Putin is expressing historic claim to Ukraine as a territory.
So if that's the case, okay. But if he just wants Sevastopol, that means that they're going to end up wanting Turkey. Or alliances with Turkey because they got to get through the Bosphorus. If they're going to...
An alliance with Turkey, maybe.
Yeah, an alliance. They need to get with Turkey on good terms. Turkey's in NATO. So, like, what is the plan then to take over Turkey? What do you think his plan is? Have you derived a mission?
Yeah, so, what I think Putin's plan is, everything east of the Dnieper River, he believes that he can secure. He's not there yet. That's like the right third of the map of Ukraine.
Kiev is in the center, right, or in the more to the left, to the western side.
Yeah, well, the Dnieper comes. It's like a football. It's about a third of the way from the eastern boundary from Crimea, and so and it's about a mile wide.
You're saying everything east. That's like half the country.
Yeah, roughly 1/3.
Yeah.
So. And I think that was his original goal. And I think right now what he wants is the coal, the oil, the natural gas, the Mariupol, the port, and to pull all that together with Crimea and have a little operating base where he's got natural resources. And I think that's what he ultimately wants. I got to tell you, I've been like all throughout so many different countries, the Balkans, all these different countries that have had the Ottomans, the Turks, the Persians, the Roman empires crisscrossing. There's a lot of territorial claims out there. Like I was in Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia, and everybody I would talk to would say, okay, well, in 1582, this was, my land, and now it's not. And so I don't know who we are to impose on this being sorted out. I know that from a NATO perspective, we have an obligation to NATO nations because we're part of a collective security arrangement. And to the extent that we have that obligation, we should do what we can to ensure the integrity of NATO. And that ought to be a collective decision. I think, bringing in, Finland and Sweden and, that all of a sudden we took that on. And if Russia pokes into, one of those countries, all of a sudden we're Article 5's activated, right? And so there wasn't a whole lot of deliberation. It was just, okay, we're expanding NATO, which in and of its own right is not a bad thing, but when you have a belligerent Russia, you gotta work your way through all this. So I think that ultimately look at NATO, do what we got to do. Where's the diplomacy? That's my big question. You got diplomacy, military, economic. We got to bring diplomacy in here. Blinken is the most incompetent Secretary of State.
I was just going to say, it's like we've got Blinken and you've got actually President Biden himself. Like, who can do it? Because the president is not like the commander in chief that's out there making the decisions. Now, I do believe that he's making some decisions because I think he made the decision to do that presser at night when he botched it after the what news was that came out? Oh, the the doctor gave the came back and said that the press release about his biography or whatever. Anyways, if Blinken is as incompetent as he seems, and the president isn't even cognizant, like who's running the show? Like, who do you think is actually doing it? Because Lloyd Austin isn't there either. So like, who the fuck is in Washington D.C. running the country? And if there's no one, why can't we just fucking close the whole place?
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all know the answer to that, Susan Rice.
I'm sorry.
Right?
Susan Rice is in control at the moment.
And it's early too. It's only 8:30. I'm
So
sorry.
if diplomacy, I like this idea because if for some reason, like the Soviet Union got split up by a bunch of oligarchs in '89, they gave that area of Sevastopol to Ukraine on purpose because they wanted to defeat Russian hegemony in the region. They didn't want Russia to be so powerful, have the Mediterranean as well. So they did that on purpose. Now, if that happened in the United States and we were broken up by some oligarchs and they gave the entire West Coast a strip all the way down the West Coast to Canada, and we had no Pacific access, we would have invaded decades ago to get that land back. So that's what Putin's doing. He wants the access to the ocean, to the sea. But what that's going to do is cause Turkey. It's going to force Turkey and Russia to come together. So maybe that's why the U.S. why this alliance is so against giving them that Black Sea access.
So Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos are going to cede California. Is that what you're saying? And that we're going to invade?
Yeah, just a thin strip, all the coastline, so that we can't get into the Pacific.
Can I still go surfing? That's my only question.
As long as they're friends with the oligarchs, I guess.
This is the pitch for the separation of California breaking into two states. Is the coastal regions become a state? You know, a lot of people initially were saying it would be like the north and the south of California would become North California, South California. No, the actual argument right now is the coastline is its own state. Congratulations, you get what you want. And then the eastern farmland becomes its own state. And the only problem with that is those cities would all starve to death.
Right.
I mean, not if they became their own state. They would just not have a good time of producing resources and generating.
They got a bunch of income with Silicon Valley and with the entertainment industry. So, but I wouldn't have I was talking to my buddy about the homeless problem in California. I'm like, look, California has plenty of money to handle a homeless problem. California has plenty of authority to pass all the laws they want. California can handle it. If California wants to take care of their problem, they can take care of it. Who am I to say anything about it? Whatever. But you know, back to the situation with NATO and stuff. Like, the point of NATO isn't to say don't get close to NATO or we'll start a fight. It's to say don't invade NATO countries. So like the idea that we have to engage Russia because they invaded a country that borders a NATO country. I mean, like, is that even, I mean, obviously that's something we can't do, but I mean, we have to. I just don't understand what the thought process is with trying to pick fights when NATO's there for a reason.
It's a great question. In the military, you have a thing called an area of operations, and you have what's called an area of interest. Ukraine would be in the area of interest, and I hope it stays there and it doesn't become in the area of operations. So it's an area where you collect intelligence, you figure out what's going on, you try to determine second and third order impacts, and you do what you can to preserve and protect your area of operations and position to make sure nothing impacts your area of operations. And that's what I have consistently advocated for in this conflict. I don't want one American boot on the ground in Ukraine.
Amen.
I don't want one son or daughter, mother, father, etc., to be killed in Ukraine for any reason whatsoever. Right now, it does not fall within the legitimate, vital U.S. interests that are codified in the National Defense Strategy. It's just not there.
Like giving up all those resources that's okay. Like national defense wise, it's okay to lose that.
Well, what are we losing?
Good, exactly. Because technically, Ukraine's not an American puppet state. Technically,
right.
But realistically, with Burisma, I mean, they've been working together with the Bidens.
What we've shut down and limited, restricted energy production in this country, so we could buy it from Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. So the America First policy is to expand energy production so we don't have to have people in the Middle East and we can begin to look more inward and fix our domestic policies. And I fully support that. And the insanity of shutting down energy production in the United States, going from net exporter to net importer from rival nations like Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. It's just upside down. It's insane, and the media does nothing to expose it. It's really counterproductive, and it's a national security issue.
And I'll just give, for the normies that play video games, if you're ever playing a game Civilization and you're importing all your oil, you have battleships, cruisers, submarines, bomber planes, and you're importing your oil from countries that then declare war on you, your equipment stops working.
That's exactly
all of it.
right.
This is fantastic. I really do think Civilization should be required teaching in schools. I'm not kidding. You get some, 13-year-old boys and you say, play Civilization, and they're going to be like, school's awesome. But what are they going to learn? They're
Dildos.
in Civilization?
No, that's what they're going to learn instead of Civilization.
No, right. I'm saying if you give them Civilization, that's the point.
Yeah.
What are they going to learn? They're going to learn that. So you start the game off as a nomadic tribe. You build your cities. You expand your borders. But you don't know where the oil is. You don't know where the nuclear, the uranium is, because your civilization has not discovered it. What happens? When the game advances to a certain point and your scientists discover uranium, you find you have none. The guys next door do, and they're building nuclear weapons. So what do? The game gets wild. You like, either they're going to bomb you or you're going to invade them. And I think you learn a lot. When I was a kid, I had Civilization 2, and I learned a whole lot getting pissed off playing, being like, why are they invading me? And they didn't even have the same kind of resource development as the modern one does. But it's like, because you have access to things they want. Like, your country could be cutting them off from water access, and they're going to stampede through to take what they want for their people.
Did you, when you were serving as a general, or I don't know what your career promotion rate was like? Track record. What, like, was it, were you full on, like, what we're doing in the Middle East is good in the early days? Did it feel good, like after 9/11? Or did it seem like it was more conquistador? Like, what?
So I'll tell you, I was commanding in the 101st Airborne. I had my troops in Kosovo doing that sort of low intensity conflict mission. We were fighting, and 9/11 happened while I was over there, and the commander of the 101st Airborne says, "Okay, you're coming back in November, and you're going to do some quick training. You're going to go to Afghanistan." And so we were in that quick training, and he comes down, and it was January of 2002, and I was in Louisiana about to wrap up training, and we were supposed to go to Afghanistan. He says, "You're not going to Afghanistan, you're going to Iraq." I'm like, "What's in Iraq? There's nothing in Iraq. It makes no sense." He says, "That's what we're doing." And so I actually, being a writer, I went home and I wrote a couple of pages just to sort of get it on paper, and the essence of it was, it just makes no sense. The one time our country asked for a hit on a platter with Osama bin Laden, and we're going to squander the goodwill of the people that want that vengeance, for lack of a better term, and just they want that they want Osama bin Laden's head on a platter, and we don't. And we take that goodwill and we direct it at Saddam Hussein. I felt like Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz, they were dead set on doing that. And I think it was the wrong thing to do. It forever changed Middle East policy, U.S. policy in the Middle East, and set us on a path that today we're still dealing with. It put us for 20 years in Afghanistan, killed thousands of soldiers, maimed thousands of soldiers, and I was never happy with that. But I saluted and moved out, and I did my military duty. But I've got that document today, and I just I went home and I vented because we were supposed to go and serve justice to Osama bin Laden, and instead we used all that goodwill of the American people to go to Iraq.
Where do you think we're heading? I mean, there's big talk of World War III. It's been nonstop for the past year.
Well, I think with this group, with Biden and Austin and Blinken in charge, I think there's a real potential that things could get even more out of hand. I talked about the Afghanistan intelligence miss, the Ukraine intelligence miss, the Hamas intelligence miss. What's the one thing that hasn't manifested yet? And that's our border. That's a huge intelligence miss, right? As bad as these people are with Afghanistan, thinking that offering Zelensky a ride out, the exact opposite instinct on Ukraine. We have agreements with Israel, and we miss that as much as they miss that, and so the border. What don't we know right now? Because that's just been millions of people coming in, and you got this president taking Texas to court to try to stop them from stopping people from coming in.
Yeah.
And so how is that going to manifest? Where is it going to manifest? That's the one thing that really worries me. And then you've kind of got sleeping over in the Pacific, China, Taiwan. And I'm not sure how that's going to manifest itself. I think China's a pretty crafty player. They may try to do more of a soft takeover like they did with Hong Kong, as opposed to, nuke it. Because what happens if we lose Taiwan Semiconductor that makes a good chunk of the world's semiconductors?
So there's one thing that we've kind of haven't really touched on, but it seems to be a recurring theme is what's going on at CIA? Why does CIA not know about Ukraine? Why did they get left flat-footed on Ukraine? Why did they get left flat-footed with the attack in Israel? And does it have anything to do with things like DEI, which everybody's terrified that it does have something to do with that, first of all? And second of all, is it something that you believe a new administration could change, or is it something that, because of the way that DEI works, it gets into your human resources departments? Is it something that you need to really clean out the entire bureaucracy to fix?
So I think,
I know there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I think Vivek Ramaswamy makes a lot of sense when he talks about, getting rid of, one of every three people or whatever. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. I think you've got to come in and be ruthless about your federal government, your bureaucracies, because they are bloated. They are, they're self-licking ice cream cones where they serve themselves, essentially. With regard to DEI and all that, of course, that's impacting performance everywhere, where we're focused on how people feel as opposed to the raw facts about, okay, what's our national interest? How are we going to get it done? Let's get it done. Work all night until you got it done. And
because the thing is, if we're going to hate CIA, let's hate CIA because they're doing things that help America as opposed to things that hurt America.
Yeah. Let me play this clip. This is from 2021. I hope I have the right one. I'm going to play it anyway.
I used to struggle with imposter syndrome, but at 36, I refuse to internalize misguided patriarchal ideas of what a woman can or should be. I am tired of feeling like I'm supposed to apologize for the space I occupy rather than intoxicate people with my effort, my brilliance. I am proud of me, full stop. My parents left everything they knew and loved to expose me to opportunities they never had. Because of them, I stand here today a proud first-generation Latina and officer at CIA.
So this is just one of these woke commercials.
What year was that?
This is 2021. You gotta fight the patriarchy. The patriarchy has convinced her that she can't do it.
What year did Russia go into Ukraine?
22.
22. And
was it February?
Yeah, and then there was the thing in October, and that worked out real good, real good.
Yeah, and it's either incompetence or intentionally.
It's intentional.
They're just just let them attack, so we'll have a reason to build up our military to fight back.
I mean, why?
There's more. Can I play more for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There's more here.
When I was 17, I quoted Zora Neale Hurston's How It Feels to Be Colored Me in my college application essay. The line that spoke to me stated simply, I am not tragically colored. There is no sorrow dammed up in my soul nor lurking behind my eyes. I do not mind at all. At 17, I had no idea what life would bring, but Zora's sentiment articulated so beautifully how I felt as a daughter of immigrants then and now. Nothing about me was or is tragic. I am perfectly made. I can wax eloquent on complex legal issues in English while also belting Guayaquil de mis amores in Spanish. I can change a diaper with one hand and console a crying toddler with the other. I am a woman of color. I am a mom. I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I am intersectional, but my existence is not a box-checking exercise. I am a walking declaration.
Sounds like it is.
A woman whose inflection does not rise.
Okay, we get it. The CIA is woke. This is their recruitment videos. This is why they're getting the rug pulled out from under them on all these things. They are moronic, and the scary thing is the interests of woke people are absolutely in misalignment with this country, and any way you cut it. So why is the border completely open and the country being ripped to shreds and Gen Z struggling to pay their bills? Because of woke CIA.
You're 100% right. I was talking about this on PCC a little bit today.
That's Pop Culture Crisis.
Yes, Pop Culture Crisis on every day at 3 on the YouTubes.
PopCultureCrisis.com.
So right now we're starting to see the crisis of competence in a lot of places. So I think that we all think that, this is part of the reasons that CIA has problems. It initially started in the entertainment industry. You saw it where people were complaining about video games being uncreative, unoriginal, complaining about the way that characters were drawn. And then they responded and you start having these big games come out that aren't done when they get released and they have to be updated and blah, blah, blah. People are unhappy with them. Same thing was happening with the movie industry. Keep putting out remakes that aren't as good, degrading quality and stuff like that. It's because of the fact that you end up with people that are unqualified to do jobs, getting hired to do jobs because their friends end up in the human resources department of this. Now, this is happening this is obviously happening in the military. It's happening at CIA. It's currently, I saw the stuff coming out about the plagiarism at Harvard. That is directly connected to the DEI stuff. There is a problem at Stanford University, the medical university in California, I believe. Ben Shapiro was talking about it. There's problems with kids not knowing the courses or the basics and stuff that they need to know in high school. All of this stuff comes back to the fact that we are taking a portion of time that people are supposed to be given to one particular discipline, right? Whether it be flying airplanes, air traffic controllers, or intelligence, or whatever it is, that discipline is now being the time that's supposed to be dedicated to that discipline is now being eaten up by DEI and by critical theories and social justice stuff. And those kinds of programs do not get smaller; they only eat more and more and more of your time and funding. And that means your intended discipline or whatever continues to fail and have more and more problems. And this is exactly the reason that socialist countries fail. Their economies fail because they are not productive, because they end up eating up the time trying to make sure that everybody is a good communist or a good socialist. This has happened multiple times in history. You've got all kinds of examples of it.
Yeah, Canada's calling, or was it the Toronto Star or whatever the paper was, calling for food price regulation?
Yeah,
we know where that goes.
There was someone talking about that. What's her name in New York? The New York AG was talking about about the climate crisis and beef and stuff like that. If you
going after a beef manufacturer because beef is bad for the environment.
Yeah, if you let the government get in total control of food production, millions of people will die. Dude. That happens every single time the government gets in control of food production. There has been famines every single time in history.
But I got to tell you, there's a lot that has been going on in this country that people won't fight for. But if you take away a man's cheeseburger, I really think you might be asking for trouble on that one. Because I mean, if I went to a restaurant and I said I would like a medium rare cheeseburger and they said, is an Impossible burger good? I would say no. No, it's not.
You're talking about like what you were just talking about, Phil, is kind of like incompetence at the CIA, which could be leading to like inability to collect data and intelligence. I'm concerned with the more nefarious, like, the easiest thing to do would be let's let them just attack a little part of our country. A few thousand people are going to die, and that'll give our entire nation casus belli to declare war and focus the force of our GDP on anything we want and make so much money. And God bless those 3,000 sacrifices. And I don't know if that's what's going on. I'm concerned that that's this country's been in the last decade, 23 years. I get that vibe with 9/11. I don't like that they had to stand down that morning and immediately went into Iraq, Afghanistan, instead of sold all that metal off to China in 3 weeks, immediately all that evidence. And then now we're seeing 7 hours in Israel. They're just Hamas is tearing them up for 6-7 hours with no response.
I think the DEI stuff is way more dangerous because it gives them justification. They're using it to get justification to, essentially to get into every aspect of your life. If they're going to use the climate and climate justice is what they're going to call it. They're going to call it climate justice. It's going to be connected to all of the left-leaning stuff. And there's more. It's going to be connected to all the left-leaning stuff. If they're going to use that, that's way more of a threat than a false flag.
It's like a more of a chronic threat, that behavior. But the acute threat would be the false flag that gets everyone in a moment to sign on the dotted line to go send the
DEI, critical race theory, Green New Deal, all of this. It's just Marxism, and it's led to this recruiting crisis that we face today, because having run large school systems and parents vote with their feet, kids, teenagers vote with their feet. If they love what you're doing, they're going to be in your school. If not, they're going to go to charter or private or whatever. Same thing with the military. If the military, unifies, offers a positive message and is focused on a good mission, you're going to get oversubscribed. If what it is divisive, here, swallow this ideology, go get 6 shots, then it's going to do the exact opposite.
What are we saw this Courage to Serve Act. They want to give these illegal, these criminal aliens coming across the border citizenship by joining the armed forces. Do you see, was there ever talk of that? Do you see that as a possibility?
Yeah, there'd have to be significant vetting. I know that there are some.
Well, you say there'd have to be, but of course there would not be.
Right. Right. Well,
you mean if it was going to be good? No, we're not talking about that.
Yeah. Well, to make the mission, they'll do whatever. But I do know that in my commands, I've had these they call them dreamers and that kind of thing that come in and they serve, and many of them are very good. They got to be mentally fit, physically fit, and they do get their citizenship that way. But they've been there for a while. They've got the proper documentation and they meet the requirements. The wholesale. These are all military age males, so keep your friends close, your enemies closer. But I think that with this,
I think they're going to send them all to Ukraine. I mean, I don't know how likely that is, but it really is problem. It's a problem that solves itself. You get millions of fighting age males crossing the border at a time when you're like, we've got a military deficit, we need troops in Ukraine. Here's what they can do: load up all of the fighting age males, make promises to them, drop them off in Poland, and say, "Oh, geez, they're not Americans." And then, but think about this: if these illegal immigrants end up fighting in Ukraine, the U.S. just says they're not Americans. There's nothing to do with that.
I mean,
we're not fighting there, and it's not NATO either. These are Guatemalans.
Send them in with all American gear, just no American. They
stole our equipment.
So, Tim, you're advocating Guatemala invading Ukraine. So.
I mean, look, we have quote unquote volunteers, Americans volunteering to fight in Ukraine. It's like, come on, like as if Russia is going like, drat, these American veterans who are being paid to fight in Ukraine. If only they were actually on paper American soldiers so that we could declare war. No, Russia knows exactly what's going on.
So I want to excite people to apply for the military. And I'm thinking, like, what are some good ideas? One is like super soldier program. You want to get like bionic implants. You want to get CRISPR technology. You want to run, 3-minute miles, breathe every 20 minutes, see 7,000 feet.
There are laws against that stuff.
Yeah, but the Chinese are doing it. So we need to counter that and be public about it to increase rates of the military.
I hear what you're saying. The only problem is if the current military was to offer some kind of CRISPR technology or like gene editing super soldier program, it would be like to make your skin darker or something like that.
Yeah, it would be simple.
Do you
things.
regret being white because of your privilege? We can change that.
I think taking less breath, needing less oxygen, seeing further, having better hearing.
They're not going to do that though, and they're also going to make you dumber.
Yeah, like also like if this stuff was possible, I mean, I understand that it's still it's something that they're thinking of. But like, if it was possible to like fix someone's eyesight or give someone better eyesight, think of how much money like you could make by just making that available to the public. Because I had some laser beams shot in my eyes to fix my vision. If I could get my vision fixed without that, or if I could have, I would prefer to not have gotten laser beam shot.
Yeah, I can see why they would want the tech to be secret.
Well, the thing is, if they had that kind of tech, like CRISPR tech and stuff, not that it's not coming, I just don't think that it's here now. And I think that you're talking about stuff that's still a couple decades away.
Be part of the prototype. Be the prototype. That would be the message, And she like shows the super soldier. But either that or like just global peacekeeping missions where we go around building wells and like solar powered water condensation for countries that don't need it necessarily, that don't ask for it, but we're there to help anyway. Like use the military to create goodwill.
We already do a lot of that. I mean, what I would say, even in Afghanistan, and 80% of combat is building wells, building schools, diplomatic relations, the young private, the young sergeant, the young lieutenant out there acting as an ambassador for the country, and they do a fantastic job at that. And so when we are deployed en masse in scale, that's the big effort is to build infrastructure. Because part of the exit strategy is to leave it better than we found it, let this entity, stand up on its own and execute. And so that's the goal. But when you have a folly like Iraq, in my opinion, you're got now it's Shia Muslim, and there's a land bridge into Israel through. It used to be the Persians and the Arabs were fighting right at that border there. And what we did through, Wolfowitz and Rumsfeld and Cheney's idiocy is eliminate that. We eliminated the major hedge against the Persian hegemony on the Arabian Peninsula. And now what we have is Hezbollah, Hamas, Shia militia groups in Syria, Iraq, and
Hezbollah's Persians?
The Houthi rebels.
Hezbollah's Persians?
No.
Okay.
They're supported by Iran.
Okay, the Shia.
Yeah, they're all Shia Muslims.
Okay.
And that was what.
Go ahead.
Is when we debased the Ba'ath Party in Iraq is basically when they all just went and created a paramilitary Shia organization, and that's what we have now as ISIS.
Yeah. Well, ISIS Sunni is ISIS. ISIS is Sunni, and ostensibly that's why we still have some troops over in Syria and Iraq, up in the Kurdistan area and so forth, to defeat that. But the major point here is that this destabilization going on in the Middle East is fueled by Iran, with, in Lebanon and Gaza and Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. And I mean, they're disrupting supply chain through the Red Sea, where Maersk, the biggest shipping company in the world, saying, I'm not moving through there.
Yeah. So Trump was planning on, he set a timeline for withdrawal out of Afghanistan. Do you believe there was a way to do that properly? What's your vision for how we could have worked this?
Well,
should we not have?
I was there. I was part of that. And we, at around Christmas time, we said, look, we got 29 other partners there. Let's go to 2,500 people. The plan is to go to Bagram, and then we can collapse from there. I was even advocating for bringing in the 82nd Airborne to the three major areas, allow for NATO partners to move in, and then you collapse everything up at Bagram. And you either hold Bagram and cut a deal with the devil there, so you got some real estate, it's a major platform, we put in hundreds of millions of dollars there, or you get out of Dodge. But if we would have kept air power there, we could have prevented this Taliban overrunning
Instantly.
I had my helicopter shot up in the Korengal Valley. The one thing a general can do in a captain's base camp, I got on the radio and I said, we're in a dogfight right now. In 5 minutes, I had a B-2 bomber, 2 A-10s, and 2 Apache helicopters. Wow. And, that captain said, "Sir, you can fight with me anytime." But
that's the most immediate delivery of ordnance ever. The general has called and said, "Get a fast mover in the air. They're up there real quick."
But my point is, as these Taliban convoys going around the country could have easily been stopped in their tracks to support the army that we had trained.
Why did they abandon Bagram in the middle of the night?
Because everybody in this administration was on vacation and they're incompetent, and they even
it sounds intentional. I mean, I don't know how you accidentally do that.
Yeah, I just think they everybody was so part of the drill was Austin purged every board. So there's lots of boards in the Pentagon. There's a defense policy board. There's a acquisition board. There's technology board. And, like on the policy board was Madeleine Albright, Henry Kissinger, and a bunch of other names. And Tony Tata was added by President Trump.
I'm sorry.
He purged all of those because, and what did that do? It ensured there was no overlap because they didn't value the hard work that all of us had been doing. And they assumed arrogantly that they knew everything and they knew better. And so all these plans that we had worked on were just gone. And to the point, I had been in Riyadh January 6th, that's where I was, with the ambassador and meeting with Khaled bin Salman. We signed a major defense cooperation plan with the Saudis. That was very important. When I, about a month after I had left the administration, or the administration had changed, I get a call from the defense attaché, and they said, "Hey, do you have a copy of that?" I'm like, "I didn't take any documents with me. It's like, it wasn't classified, but it was sensitive."
What do I look like, a politician?
Right, exactly. And they said, "Well, nobody in your old office can find it." And so what they had to do to recreate the document was take the Saudi version in Arabic and translate it. and then, they had to put it back together, wow, reconstruct it. That's how damaging this arrogance of this administration coming in the way they did. And it's been nothing but chaos.
And it's essentially, it's just motivated by, we're just going to do everything that Trump wouldn't or didn't do.
It was the exact opposite. And so all of the things we're talking about here, like even Austin testifying about his absence, right? I worked directly for Austin twice. I was a deputy commanding general when he was a commanding general 10th Mountain. I was an airborne battalion commander for him when he was airborne brigade commander. And so I know him pretty well. He knows very well that you got to let the boss know you're not going to be at work, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's not, but when I went on that trip to 6 different nations as the undersecretary, I had to sign a piece of paper saying I was going to be away and I was appointing this guy to be my deputy, or my deputy was going to take my duties. The deputy had to sign it, and it was witnessed by a third person. The processes are in place. And so as he was testifying yesterday, listening to him say, "Well, we've now put in, there were processes in place." And it's not like, the career civil servants there do a pretty good job. Like I had a woman that ran the undersecretary's office. She'd been there for 30 years. She knew everything. She is awesome. She made sure I signed all that paperwork, and she filed it. And it's a notification, a big email goes out. This was all cloak and dagger. They didn't want anybody to know. They didn't want it to get out. And why these people, the chief, the deputy, the secretary, why they still have jobs, I have no idea.
Is this when he went to get surgery? Mm-hmm. And they just didn't tell anyone because they didn't want to?
Yeah. He was in the hospital under anesthesia. Nobody was in charge. And he said at no time was there a lapse in coverage. I think he's pushing that perjury line.
Wow. Okay. I kind of feel like, we were having a conversation this morning about the Roman Empire, and everyone's like, are we in a similar time? And, I think Ian were saying it was 1913. It was the Federal Reserve. The Republic's been gone for a long time. Well, I don't know about all that, but I can tell you is right now, since the Biden administration began, something has gone missing from this country. And, a lot of people have speculated that someone else is in charge of Joe Biden. And I've made the argument, no, I think it's Joe Biden. Maybe it's 50-50, but I imagine it like Joe Biden mutters some gibberish, and then the people in the room look at each other like, whatever you say, and then do nothing. And then that's why it's chaos.
Well, there's no accountability, and when you have no accountability, then anything can go. But like think about this, unelected bureaucrat, 30-year-old, whatever he was, that was calling Twitter and saying, "Hey, we don't like these people. Yeah. Let's deplatform them." And Twitter says, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." And then, okay, let's roll the FBI in on that too, and to make sure that, we deplatform these other people. It's that kind of thing. You get these people in the White House and they think that they're elected, that they have the power, and they just start doing stuff. And if there's no accountability, particularly from the media, it's out of control. And so I think Biden is particularly incompetent, and I think he's corrupt. Yeah. And I think he's, first and foremost, how does he maintain power? How does he aggrandize himself financially? How does he help his family and friends and political party? Then way down the list is how do I help America and the citizens? He from my point of view, every decision he makes kind of follows that hierarchy.
Do you think the accountability should come from Biden? It should come from the president himself?
I think it should come from the press, and I think that then they should make decisions based from Congress should hold people accountable. The system ought to work as the framers designed it. And yeah, I think the president should say, you know what, it's unacceptable not to tell me you're going to be gone for a week. You're out of here. I think the president should say to Frank McKenzie, the CENTCOM commander, or to Lloyd Austin or whomever, it's unacceptable what happened in Afghanistan. You're out of here. The one thing I love about the Navy, if the captain runs the ship into a coral reef, he's fired. The next day, they put somebody else in charge.
Now we got, what was it, that Space Force video saying respect my pronouns?
Oh, boy.
Do you see that one?
No.
I think it was Space Force.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm kind of just like, our southern border is non-existent. You've got looming international conflict, World War III maybe, and our military is very concerned with pronouns.
And
not confidence building.
Well, I mean, in that video, that she ties pronouns to combat readiness.
God, that's
and that's the insulting part. And how you become combat ready is real simple. You train, and you have very tough training, and you eviscerate people when in this training they make mistakes so that they learn and they don't make that mistake when they're in the real game.
So we have this video. I think this is the video. Let's play it.
Oh, God.
Libs of TikTok tweeting, Lieutenant Colonel Bree Fram, a trans-U.S. Space Force official, spoke to the U.S. Air Force about inclusion and demanded everyone to respect LGBTQ people and their pronouns.
All too often, I hear leaders talk about providing everyone with dignity and respect like it's an aspirational goal. That's not good enough. Dignity and respect is the bare minimum.
Wrong. Respect is earned, not given.
It's the floor of where we can be. We must set our sights higher and focus on intentional inclusivity, because there are still far too many people out there, not just LGBTQ individuals, that feel marginalized, shut out, or discriminated against. So for all of you out there, I ask you to set out your symbols of pride, share your pronouns in your email, particularly if you're a person who doesn't think they need to. Initiate difficult conversations about racial and gender barriers, and share a bit of your vulnerability in a way that draws others in.
This is insane.
You all have the power to take intentionally inclusive actions to ensure the multiple perspectives that we know make us stronger as we devise winning warfighting strategies get heard.
Okay, so my assumption is that China or Russia or Iran or whatever is poisoning our water supply, hacking our internet, sowing mis and disinformation all across the internet to indoctrinate people into strange ideologies which inhibit their ability to win wars.
So
I think it's corporations doing it, and they're just doing it for profit, and the byproduct is endocrine disruption.
I want to ask your opinion about, like, so the military used to have a standard for mental health, right? And now they've clearly stopped paying attention, not just because of the trans people, and that's not what I'm getting at. Just last week, a man immolated himself in front of, in Washington, D.C. How is it that is getting by people in the military? How is it that someone that is not only clearly mentally ill, if he caught himself on fire, the guy was so brainwashed by the leftist dogma that they're allowing in? Obviously, the kid had a Reddit profile, and you can go down the list of anarcho-communist gripes, whether it be profit or property or environmentalism. Literally, he hit every last single topic that a woke person could hit, and then he is supporting an enemy of the United States who is currently holding Americans hostage by burning himself alive in front of an ally's, embassy.
Phil, I think the word is not allowed. I think the word is right here. We're looking at it. It's being promoted, right? And so this in the name of inclusion, I think they've sort of opened the aperture, inclusion, and then you have the recruiting challenges. And look, if somebody wants to raise their right hand, I don't care what they dress like, what they do. If they're physically and mentally fit to carry a machine gun or a radio, good on them, let them execute. That's sort of my view. But
as an infantry officer, though, do you think that women are as capable in a combat role as dudes? Wouldn't you? If you're commanding,
you would say on average.
So how about this? If you're going into combat and you are leading a platoon, would you prefer a platoon of men, or would you want a mixed platoon?
I would want the platoon that is able to train together and execute together and carry, do fireman's carries and carry the ammo and all that. And if there are some women in there that can do that, then, whatever. But the bigger picture to me is that this kind of, BS is taking a very fringe piece, and it's promulgating a dogma that as part of the recruiting challenge. And so they must be underwriting, they being the senior leadership in DOD, this erosion of values and erosion of unity in the name of 5-10 years from now having more of this.
This video is why recruitment is down.
Right. Yeah.
It is. This is it.
Right. Yeah.
We had that Newsweek poll the other day. 65% they found of 18 to 24-year-olds favor Trump. They think Trump is going to shake this country up for the better. You think those 65 people are going to want to enlist for this?
No, I was thinking.
But to be, I want to add this real quick. It's not just that. I mean, if you were too young to enlist after 9/11, because a lot of people did when they saw what happened, and then you saw what happened with Iraq and Afghanistan, yeah, you're not going anywhere near that stuff. So there are probably a lot of young people seeing the failures, especially now with Afghanistan, and they're like, I'm not joining that garbage for that, for what? Right. And then you add this on top. I'm not surprised we're seeing what we're seeing. I've often referenced this guy I met. He was a captain. He resigned his commission. He says, I don't want to work out. He wanted to be in there for his career.
Stuart Schiller, right?
No, I don't know. I don't remember his name. But we were having dinner, and he said that he was a captain. He intended to be his whole career here. And now he's in his mid-30s, and he's resigned his commission because it's woke.
I get it, like national defense, military is national defense. So why are we overseas? And you could say, well, it's like sometimes if you just sit still, you're an easy target for people to come across your border. So you got to go out in forays and fortify the areas around where you live so that those things, the Romans did it. But they'd use that as an excuse to constantly expand. They might attack us later, so let's attack them first. It's not, the argument is it's national defense. That's why they send the military. But like, when people look at it, like, it doesn't feel like we're defending ourselves when we're aggressing east through Europe and conquering it. I don't know. It doesn't feel like defense.
Yeah. So I'm going to probably get it wrong, but if I remember right, the Constitution says we shall raise an army and we shall maintain a navy, and those two words, I believe, are intentional. You scale the army up and down because the framers were worried about the big land wars going on in Europe and the abuse by the federal government of those big armies to oppress people. The Navy, maintain, meaning permanent, protected commerce, helped go overseas and increase the markets for the country. And, remember, piracy was a big thing back then, and the Navy helped protect all that commerce because we were shipping stuff everywhere. So the Army can scale up and down as required, but the Navy is really what's needed. So you're exactly right is what I'm saying, and the Constitution sort of bears out this idea of, let's have a big army when we need a big army. But let's keep the Navy so that we can keep our sea lanes open, we can keep the trade going, we can keep the commerce going.
Is the big problem that they've just kept a big army and it's cost the country unfathomable amounts of wealth?
The major cost to the country is not military expenditure. The major cost of the country is entitlements. If you talk about the Fed, or you talk about like the debt and stuff like that, it is all driven by the entitlements. Like our unfunded liabilities is where our actual debt is. The amount of money that we spend on the military, while it is large, and especially compared to other countries, it is nothing compared to the amount of money that we have to spend on just servicing the debt. Last year, was the first time that we spent more on servicing the debt than we spent on the United States military.
Man, that's nuts. Do you know what the budget is?
Servicing the debt. That's not, and remember, that's just paying the interest on the debt. That's not paying off the debt.
The Department of Defense is $715 billion.
Yeah. When I was undersecretary, it was around $720 billion, and it's probably up around $800 billion right now.
Okay, that's not. Was it just too much? Is it the reason you scale the army or the military up and down because you don't want to go bankrupt in a time of peace?
Standing armies are a threat to liberty.
Yeah, right. That's the point the framers were making, is that a large standing army is a threat to liberty, and that's why they had the National Guard, the well-regulated militias.
Which, not to cut you off, which a lot of state police forces right now are basically armed like the army or like the military, and there's a lot of people that have a problem with that. Sorry for cutting you off.
Right. No, but that tension should be between states like Texas and the federal government. Yep. That's built into the Constitution. That's what it's all about. That governor has certain powers. You cannot federalize the National Guard unless you deploy the Insurrection Act.
And he mentioned tension. That's part of what the Second Amendment is for too. Is part of that tension against
right. No, that's it's all.
I just like
relevant.
what you're saying, so I'm like cheering you on.
And there should be more of that. There should be more governors opposing and saying to the federal government, because this Marxist ideology wants a strong federal government. They want to increase the size of federal government so that they can oppress and control, and that's what it's all about. That's where we are today as a nation, and it's a very scary time right now.
If our military was below like recruiting standards, and then some grand scale conflict erupted overnight, would we be able to pad our numbers quick enough? It would be like the draft the next morning, I would imagine, would get signed. And then
I nominate David Hogg for first in line. You ever see Edge of Tomorrow when Tom Cruise's character is like, I'm a PR guy, and they're like, that's why we're putting you on the front line. We're going to put you on the front line, give you a camera so you can film it. And I nominate David.
But
Hogg.
I guess like you were saying,
and that hairy guy, whatever his name is.
If you're whoever attacks, the creative attacker is going to win, or at least they're going to get their strike off first. So it's like no matter how big our military is, if someone's creative,
look at Israel. Okay, they got attacked, they got surprised. They're shutting down businesses because they're using everybody from 18 to 70 to go defend their country and fight in Gaza and be on the border with Lebanon and fight Hezbollah. I mean, that's an existential threat right there, and people get lost in the politics of all of that. But I've been to the Golan Heights, I've been down to the border with Gaza, I've been into Jerusalem, I've been along the West Bank. So I mean, you talk about a country that every day has to worry about surviving. When Iran says death to Israel, death to the United States, believe them. Believe what they're saying. Don't try to deal with them like this, administration's trying to do. Just believe that they want Israel to not exist and that they want to harm the United States as much as possible.
To that point, that was one thing that frustrated me when Barack Obama was in office. He refused to believe the jihadis wanted what they said they wanted. He was constantly saying, well, it's economic, it's because they don't have this or they don't have that. And it's like, when ISIS was around, they put out Dabiq with like literal explanation of this is why it was entitled, this is why we fight you, this is why we hate you, this is why we fight you. And it was like, that's really what they believe. And I feel like liberals can't at all wrap their head around people believing other things. And it's something that I've seen when it comes to like now the whole Marxist stuff, like the philosophy that underlays like our society and the Western society is an Enlightenment philosophy. Whereas Marxism and stuff like that, and especially the stuff, the LGBTQ stuff and stuff, the philosophy that underlies that is all counter Enlightenment. It's all says that it doesn't, it can't interact with reality. And people just don't believe that people think differently to them and have very, very different ways of thinking.
To be fair, like, what I was thinking? There are these videos of people getting really angry because their pronouns aren't being respected. If that righteous indignation is funneled into combat infantry, I think we'll win some battles there, right? So maybe the Space Force individual is not incorrect.
Maybe, and service should guarantee citizenship. So.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? I agree with that, but it's actually a one-up on where we currently are. Yeah. It's funny that they're talking about the Courage to Serve Act, service guaranteeing citizenship, but it doesn't work when you're bringing in people who are not from this country, who are going to vote against your values. That's just it.
I personally like the concept of someone comes into the United States or joins the military and becomes serves an amount of time in the military and then is allowed to become a citizen. I don't have a problem with that, particularly if they are vetted. If it was a situation where it's like you got to find people that actually want to be,
someone comes here legally.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is that if they wanted to, like, so they would say you live in Guatemala and you're just like, I want to join the U.S. military. So I'm going to send an email. I want to join the U.S. military. I wouldn't have a problem with the U.S. military grabbing a dude from Guatemala, putting him on a plane, shooting him over here, vetting him, making sure that he actually does want to join the military and he actually believes the things that we do, put him through significant training, and then put him in a unit. And after he serves his time, if he serves his time honorably and he gets an honorable discharge, then I wouldn't have a problem with him becoming a citizen.
I would. Legal resident permit's fine. But the issue with citizenship is the more people you bring into your country who don't have your values, they will vote against you no matter what.
That's why I said vetting.
But vetting's fine. I mean, if a guy is from Guatemala, he's going to know Guatemalan history, Guatemalan superheroes, Guatemalan food, and he will vote for those things. Those things aren't bad things. They're just not American things. So you bring someone in, they serve the country amicably, they help us, they assist us, legal resident, work rights and everything, but you're not voting.
There is the
erosion of voting is gutting and destroying this country.
But we do have the phenomenon of internet video. So like a lot of Guatemalans are huge fans of Spider-Man, for instance, and watch American TV from the age of 3. So they know English really well. Whereas 200 years ago, these people are coming off the boat, not knowing what the hell's going on. So the vetting might be a little easier. Might be.
Look, the math is simple. Okay. You have 100 people in a small town. Their grandfathers built the bridge. Their great-grandfathers tilled the fields, and they deeply care about the statue of the town's founder. And you bring in 100 people who aren't from there, and they're going to say, why are we funding 10% of the budget towards maintaining the statue? And then the people who live there say, because this is the person who made it all possible, we don't want to forget him. And they say, okay, well, we outvote you now, so we vote to tear it down to stop wasting money. And now your statues are gone.
I heard someone, I forget where I heard it. Someone, maybe it was a super chat or something like that on another podcast or whatever. Either way, they had what I thought sounded like a halfway decent idea. Local elections, anyone can vote, like any citizen can vote, right? But then as you get up in like up to state level and then federal level, he was talking about having some kind of service to be able to vote on a state or a federal level. And I think that might actually not be a bad idea. Local level, because local is the stuff that impacts people most. And actually, if you vote in your local elections, that's when you'll feel like your vote matters the most. Because,
so
good.
No, just to clarify my point. I'll wrap up your point, but I want to go back.
Well,
to
I just think that might be an idea worth discussing. So.
What I'm saying is there is nothing evil or inherently bad in a basic level to someone saying, okay, so we're going over the town's budget, and I see that we're spending $1,000 a month to clean and maintain the statue. Someone says, I don't think we should. You're allowed to. You're allowed to think that. My point is, if everyone agrees the statue is a good thing and we like it, when you bring in people who are not from there and they now have the right to vote, they're not going to value the traditions, the morals, the ethics of what was built in this town and what made it good. I don't like that people would come to this country and say, who cares about the Constitution? What does that mean for me? You've got these videos of these people who are like, I'm the child of immigrants and this country is racist and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And I'm like, why do you hate what? Like, you're voting against us. You're voting against what we want. You're voting against what made this country good. We obviously want to progress. We want to get rid of bad things. We want to expand civil rights. But coming here and just calling, it's remarkable that you have people who would come here and say this country is absolutely racist. We hate it. We want reparations. It really just comes down to the simple fact. If you like that your town does a certain tradition, okay, just understand the more people who move in who don't have that tradition, the more likely it is that will be done away with. So this means if we go to Guatemala and say, join the military and we'll give you citizenship, they're going to come here and they're going to say, I don't care about baseball. So why would I support baseball? Why would I support anything having to do with it? It then comes down to a vote. Surprise, surprise. The 100 people who lived in this town who always vote to have a citywide baseball game are now finding themselves outvoted by people who are nice people, who are good people and hardworking people who say, no, we don't want to waste money on this. We're 51% of the population now, and we hereby vote for a football game instead. And now the people who like baseball are like, but we don't like football. Too bad. They came in, they changed your traditions, they changed your way of life, and what you had and what your parents built for you and your grandparents built for you has been erased. That is not an act of evil, is an act of change. Not all change is bad. My point is simply, when it comes down to the issues like the Constitution, what the values of this country are, bringing in people who don't have those traditional values will fundamentally change the country. And the more we bring people in like that, the more the country changes to the point where it cannot be saved.
I don't think the points that you're making, I don't have any argument with those, but I do think that historically we have been able to have people come in and assimilate them. I think the problem has been
legal
the rate.
Assimilation. And I recently just talked to a person who's in their 90s saying they came here from Italy. Their grandparents said, you will learn the language. You will learn to be an American. We will learn what it means to be an American. And I love that. That's fantastic.
You should not, society should not allow, our society, the United States, should not allow people to come here and then demand that they set up an enclave where they can behave like their own like their own culture, independent of the United States. We should encourage people to come to the United States and assimilate. We should not allow people to come into the United States that don't share our philosophy. If you are a communist, if you don't believe that in liberalism, I don't care what your religion is, if you have an extremist view and you believe that your religion is going to take precedence over the laws here, so if your religion says something atrocious, then you're going to do it? No, you're not welcome.
Let me give you another scenario. We say, okay, anybody who wants to serve in the military will and is vetted and is a good person, no criminal record, you can serve, you become a citizen. What's another issue there? Let's say this person is 20 years old. They come in, they serve 4 years, they get out. Congratulations, sir. Welcome to America. They say, awesome. The first thing they do is they walk up to the voting booth and they say, I want my mom to come next. Bang. Now what happens is their community is outside this country. You're going to see sponsorship. So now they're going to say something like, I assume responsibility for my mother, my brother, my sisters, and you get chain migration. Immigration inherently is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, actually, but it has to be done legally. The people have to be placed properly. They have to assimilate. That means no enclaves. That's bad. And that means no chain migration. That's bad as well. But where it currently stands right now, you bring in one young man, the first thing he does is he offers to sponsor a family member, which means he assumes tax liability and debt liabilities, and they can come and live in the United States sponsored by him. This is what we end up getting. Those people who come here, their community is still their home country, and they will vote to benefit their home country. like they're going to vote to keep the door open. They're going to vote. We saw this in California in the 90s when the Republicans said public services cannot be given to non-citizens. There were riots, there were protests, and the state has never been Republican since. It's now just strongly Democrat, and it could be because Republicans left, maybe. But what basically happened was you had a bunch of young people who were American citizens whose parents were not, and whose family members were not, and so when the state said public coffers are not for non-citizens, this young guy goes, but my mom's not a citizen. My dad's not a citizen. That means if they're ever sick and in trouble, they can't get help. No way. I oppose that. We hereby vote to give money to non-citizens. That's what you get.
Yeah, I mean, it has been policy for a long time where if you join the military, you can join the military and you can become a citizen. That's not new.
Right, but I'm saying plucking from another country, someone who enlists and then bring them here. If someone's a legal immigrant to this country, meaning they're already legally here as a resident, and they want to go through that process, I agree with that. Absolutely. I believe that's part of assimilation, right? Joining the military, serving, basic training, learning what it means, swearing an oath to the Constitution, all that good stuff. Fantastic. I'm saying you pull someone from a foreign country and you bring them here, and then after a few years, they're just...
If we took
a
a bunch of like illegal immigrants and just were like, we're creating new platoons, we're going to 10,000 dudes, are there chances that they'd be like, yes, excellent, and they get in there and they're like sleeper cells for, you know, some Lebanese terrorist organization, and they turn on their commander in the middle of combat, they overthrow their platoon and take control?
That's a movie.
Like, is that actually potentially possible?
That's my next book.
It's all yours.
That would be a good story.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm listening. I mean, it's such a rich conversation. The idea of taking illegal immigrants and weaponizing them, giving them weapons, training them, you know, within a structured environment. I think right now they would have to go through months and months and months of training on just the laws of the country, sort of like the citizenship process, and then there would have to be a heavy duty weeding out process as well. And I think Tim makes some very, very good points about that erosion of your values or your culture, your system. That's what's happening right now in the country. Right. So, I mean, we're seeing this.
So I want to bring up schools, because I think that's where it's coming from, and you have so much to mention. I just want to put a pin in it. Go ahead finish what you were saying. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Well, my impression is that the Department of Education has basically been used to ideologically indoctrinate literal generations of kids now. In my opinion, there's 2 generations that we've got basically indoctrinated. It seems like Gen Z is rejecting it, but I don't know if... I think that we've already got such a significant output of students that graduated that were taught using basically Marxist power dynamics to base their schooling on. I personally am in favor of getting rid of the Department of Education completely, but I also am aware that the reason that it's so ubiquitous through schools is because it's in the schools that teach teachers. So it's not just that it's in schools for your kids. The teachers are being taught, this is how you teach kids. They're being taught the Paulo Freirean method.
So my idea now is we should not abolish the DOE. And I think Thomas Massey is wrong. What we should do is mandate Gadsden flags, ban pride flags. So when Trump gets elected, you're never going to abolish the DOE. The Congress is not going to allow it, but maybe Trump or somehow we get an appointee in there who says, I'm going to bang the gavel. Here's uniform policy across the country. What you got to do, let them all protest and whinge and cry. But welcome to the system you're a part of.
Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I was the superintendent of the 15th largest school system in the country, Wake County, 150,000 students, 170 schools, 18,000 employees, half of whom were teachers, 9,500 teachers, 12 municipalities within this very large county, Raleigh, and then you had 11 others like Cary, Morrisville, Wake Forest, Apex, etc. And some were very rural, Zebulon, etc. And some were, obviously dense cities like Raleigh and Southeast Raleigh. and it was about 35%. What they call free and reduced lunch students, right, which was representative of low-income students. And so that became the euphemism, really, because unfortunately there's a big racial overlap there. Black, Hispanic, white, Asian is the typical achievement gap, as they call it, in education. So this was 12 years ago. I was a superintendent.
So you were there when they were going through all the Common Core stuff, right?
It had just come out. It had just got. I left kind of right as all that was coming out, and I have to say that there's a corporate mentality just like anywhere. It's a bureaucracy, and to move up in the bureaucracy, you kind of gotta be approved by your boss. And so there's a lot of groupthink that happens. And that groupthink is influenced by, even though there were no unions in North Carolina right to work state, they had the North Carolina Association of Educators, which was a quasi-union-like entity. People paid dues to it, and it's very liberal, very pro-Democrat politician, very much tied to the American Federation of Teachers and the teachers unions writ large in at the national level. Those extreme policies get funneled through each of the state and local county, because education is mostly a local deal, right? It's mostly the Department of Education at the federal level has very little influence on things at the local level.
Do they have influence on the curriculum that's picked?
Unless it's Common Core, this curriculum that, I was able to implement. I created 2 leadership academies with public service. I created Career Technical Academy. I was fighting against charter schools.
Did you feel like you had good results with those programs?
Well, the 2 leadership academies, they were single gender, and a young men's and a young women's leadership academy. I had a lot of parents telling me, I'm worried about my kid going to 1,500 student middle school, the mayor of Raleigh last year emailed me and said, Tony, your 2 leadership academies have the highest graduation rates and the highest proficiency rates in the state of North Carolina. And the Democrats on the school board fought me on creating those. And it was, they didn't want that change. They wanted to kind of do lockstep on whatever it was that the teachers unions were talking about. So that's the real. There's this ideology that's force fed, and then the promotion rates or the promotion within the system. You kind of got to go with that if you want to get promoted, right? And then it just becomes ossifies, and all of a sudden you get what's happening in a couple of counties over here in the school board that
Loudon.
Yeah, Loudon
That's
County.
30 seconds. 30 seconds. You drive down the road, you make a left turn, you're in Loudon.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yep. All right, we're going to go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and head over to timcast.com. Click Join Us, become a member. No members only show on Fridays, but Monday through Thursday. But you can also get access to our Discord server to hang out with like-minded individuals. Our first ever live event in Martinsburg, West Virginia is on Tuesday. And if you want to come to any future events, you have to be a member, because notice for tickets, it's members only. They're private events. And we only send the notice out to members. It's the only way you can actually buy a ticket, because it is a private event. All right, here we go. Tracer says, not first. Tracer, you were first.
Nice job, Tracer.
Nice job. Shane H. Wilder says, happy Friday, gang. Great culture war today. Also, do you think Biden is trying to pull an Obama by going after journalists with anonymous sources? Oh, Catherine Herridge, man.
Oh, yeah, that's another great.
$800 fine per day unless she gives up her source.
Is it
nuts?
I was under the impression that judges usually respected when No, that's not the case. Okay.
When it comes to journalists and sources, judges will use the amount of legal force that they believe will compel a person to comply. What's supposed to happen is, after a certain amount of time, if the individual does not comply, and it becomes apparent the court cannot compel them, they're supposed to stop. There was a journalist who he went to jail, I think, for like 180 days for refusing to give up some like video footage or something. That was, I think we might have had him on the show.
What was his name?
Something Wolf, I think. You want to look it up? Was it Josh Wolf? That was a while ago.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Is he from Epic Times?
I don't know. It's just a very famous story of a journalist who refused to hand over video footage and got locked up.
Is that Josh Wolf from Medium?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
It's been a while, but basically what ends up happening is the court, eventually the lawyer says, there is no amount of time you can hold this person in prison that will compel them to do it, so they have to be released. And then that's what happens. Catherine Herridge is being charged $800 per day.
Good for her for sticking to her guns, though.
Real journalist.
Yes, real journalist. So.
Jacob Parody says Nar Bars Candles on Public Square now has a line of scented laundry detergent. Ooh, really? Let's go. Also, our candle inventory has been restocked. I got to tell you, super chats, it's give or take. You never know. But if you're like one of the first super chats, they usually get read. And that means we're going to shout out your advertisement or whatever. Cheapest way to get a sponsorship spot on the show, I suppose. All right. The Emperor Champion says, congratulations, Democrats. You have become what you despise, tyrants and despots who refuse to see what you have become. Yeah, but I don't know if they despise tyrants and despots. I think they're kind of into it. You know what I mean?
They just don't like it when it's the
There's
other
a
guys.
statue of Lenin in Seattle. They're very happy with it.
Yeah, you were right. That guy's name is Joshua Wolf. He served 226 days in prison.
Wow.
Nearly the longest of any journalist in U.S. history for protecting source materials.
Yeah. Crazy. Let's go. I'm not your buddy guy says, I hope people realize the true stakes of 2024. The U.S. isn't the only country making decisions as though they're about to be going after people. It's going to get wild, man.
The New World Order. What's it going to look like?
T-Rex Pet Shop says, you should get a Mormon on the culture war to debate Seamus since they both believe they're the only true church.
Oh, speaking of Mormonism, I talked about Mormonism last night and I was incorrect. I was saying that there was some passage in like the texts, the text that I was referencing was called the Doctrine and Covenants from 1835, which I actually bought a copy of last night. I'm looking forward to reading this. But I was, the guy that told me said it was Mormonism, that it's stuff I was quoting, but
Was
it was
it Islam?
The Talmud. No, it's like Old Testament, Judaism.
Deuteronomy?
Yes. The quote that I was reading about having to pay, if you rape a woman, a virgin, you've got to pay her father $50 and marry her. That's from the Talmud. That's not Mormonism.
All right.
Let's
grab some more. Siri Design says, do you see the documents that how do you pronounce this?
50 shekels.
Polivet
50 shekels.
revealed in Kennedy yesterday? Trudeau actively covered up, how do you pronounce it?
Pierre Poilievre.
Poilievre? Yeah. There you go. Trudeau actively covered up Canadian biolab leaks from CCP operatives. What? Is that true?
Yo, shout out Pierre Poilievre. That guy's awesome.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He's giving me hope for Canada.
Patrick De Niro says it's not Biden crossing the Rubicon. It's him seizing Caesar's assets and gelling his supporters. You got to watch the Culture War from this morning. So Tenet Media on YouTube, the Culture War podcast. Take a listen on YouTube. We talked about Rome the whole way, and there's really interesting things, but I think the general consensus is Trump is not Caesar, and we actually discussed like what period of Rome we may be in, and it's really interesting. A lot of really, really interesting stuff happened in Rome, more than most people even know. So I recommend it. Sean Brown says, Tim, check out Kentucky Bill 500. They're trying to pass a law to make it where employers don't have to give you a lunch or breaks at work anymore. That's nuts. Come on. You don't get to eat. All right. The Authentic Hydro PX says, Tim, I, as the Authentic Hydro PX, am your biggest fan, and I can't wait to see your honest and genuine work covering the news tonight. Wow. Thanks, Hydro.
Very nice of him.
That's very nice. The Authentic Hydro. Wow.
Yeah, he's very kind.
That's very big fan. Big fan.
I'm a big fan of him too, actually.
There's some fake Hydro account. We're not gonna read those.
Some controlled opposition.
For those that don't know, in the super chats, Hydro is just every night sending hundreds of dollars to smack talk the show. But I consider that a form of endearment.
Yes. Dudes insult you if they like you.
Tisnolorum says, and how we burned in the camps later thinking, what would things have been like if every security operative, when he went out at night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive and had to say goodbye to his family? Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Crazy. Man. You guys ever see that meme where it's the women are like, oh, you're so great. I'm going to miss you so much. Oh, you're so lovely. Okay, bye. And then as soon as the woman walks away, they're like, what a bitch. And then the guys are like, you dumb a-hole. You're an idiot. Yeah, screw you. And then when he walks away, they're like, that guy's great.
My dad used to give my friends that he liked the most amount of garbage, just constantly giving them crap. You know, and we're metal kids, so we're all walking around with long hair and stuff. Like, so my dad was just constantly laying into him. And there were kids that he didn't like that he never addressed. Like, he barely would look at them like, hey, you know.
Yeah, that's the guy code,
Yeah.
right? You learn that in guy camp, right? Yeah.
So I read something funny. Maybe you'll know this better. I read that in basic training, men start by fighting with each other, but in the end, they figure out their structure and order. Women start by being cooperative, but in the end, they form cliques and they're mad at each other.
Yeah, well, I hadn't heard the women part because I spent most of my time in the infantry. I did command. I had women in my command at the higher levels. But yeah, that's interesting. Not surprising.
Yeah. I don't know how true it is. Just I read it on the internet.
The dudes not getting along in the beginning is part of them figuring out who's competent and who should be in charge. It's how
babies play too. Little boys will play like that.
Anybody who's had chickens knows this.
Yeah.
The roosters will like puff their necks up and start going like this at each other, and then eventually they figure out who's the boss. And the girls do it too.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And then we actually had our first annual Timcast Cockfest today. We had Allison made rooster chili.
I hear it was good.
It got annihilated. Like everybody. So we had a full roast rooster, and I had a little bit of it, and it was good. It's chicken. There's no other way to describe it. We literally ate chicken. And but Allison's rooster chili, everyone as soon as they tasted it, they were like, "That's it."
Wow,
cleared out.
Did you guys finish it off?
Yeah, it's gone.
The other thing is it was soaked in vinegar, like pressure cooked in vinegar. There were like 4
marinated overnight.
Vinegar is the secret MVP.
It smelled. We licked it off the top. It smelled rough.
I can't
do
it.
I bet it tastes good.
Well, I don't know about the
I
other.
have a feeling.
It's
still
I don't
marinating,
think
right,
the one
as
that
we
was
speak.
the one that was roasted, I don't think was marinated in vinegar.
Yes, that one was kind of bland. The one that was just sitting out.
Yeah, there was
didn't have
nothing
much-
on it.
Nothing, no flavor
That
to
was
it.
that was straight up roast rooster. It was
Yeah.
like rooster was taken out, put in the oven for several hours, and it was good. People were saying it was like tougher than normal, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't tell. You just put it in your mouth, you eat it. It's like chicken.
It was a little tougher.
I obviously
It
got
was
here
very
too late.
fatty.
You
Yeah,
did a little bit too late.
Yeah, the rooster roast.
You know, the
was off
crazy thing
charts.
is when we cut into the rooster, so
It
much
screamed.
fat
No, I'm
came
just
out
kidding.
that once like it sat for a little while, there was like a layer of fat congealed on the plate. It was a lot of fat.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think there's something different about real homegrown backyard chicken. Granted, we're eating roosters. You know, they're not like
And
broiler hens or anything.
Chicken
like that.
tender Kim was saying a lot of the chickens you eat are 6-week-old chickens. So these roosters are like
Yeah.
2 years old. Some of them
No,
are year and a half.
No.
Some of them are
8 months, 9 months.
So you got fat roosters. You got to put them on a training regimen, or
You just feed them. No, I think these ones were like 8 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
older,
they-
much older than what normal chickens you eat. Maybe that's why they're so
6
tough.
weeks. Yeah, but they inject those chickens with weird hormones, make them grow
Right,
faster.
right,
That's
right,
nasty
right.
stuff, dude. Yeah, but also it explains why the when you order wings are really small.
Oh, young chickens?
I mean, I always wondered this. Like, if you go to a bar and you're like, "I'll take the wings," you get these little drumsticks, and then I'm like, the drumstick on our roosters like this. They're big, and you go to the fried chicken place, you get big drumsticks. It's like they're giving you baby chickens, man. All right, we'll read some more. Well, enough chicken talk. Enough chicken talk. Dave Collins says the people with TDS would rather start World War III and ignore President Biden's dementia than see President Trump elected again. It's a mental disorder. Dude, that's how I'm feeling. That's how I'm feeling. I'm like, all this weird Afghanistan stuff seems to be rooted in domestic policies, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
They just hate Trump so much. They'd rather the whole world burn down.
Yep.
Man.
Shocking.
It's a combination. It's a weird combination of people that hate Trump and they are willing to burn the world down to prevent Trump, and then people that want to burn the world down, so they're supporting the people that hate Trump.
Yeah. The new, they're like this world order thing. We're going to make it and change it one way or another, and
I
Trump's
think-
in the way.
I personally, I think it's a whole lot of Marxism that's going on, but you know.
Yeah, I do too.
All right. Blazalot says, factory worker here. You help keep me aware of the world outside of here, and for that I am grateful. As a kid that Married with Children, that grew up with Married with Children, that Al hated his wife and family as an adult. I generally get the idea of what you're trying to say, because I realize that he actually loves his family. Yeah, I guess, like, the problem I had with Married with Children was that certainly when the family was threatened, they'd band together. You know, it's like outside. But the show was basically just him complaining about being married and hating his family.
They were all hating each other, yeah.
I couldn't do it. I hated that show.
It was kind of, I think that it was fairly a new concept, too, at the time. Like, I don't recall a lot of...
There's like the...
No Man
Archie,
was funny.
What was the Bunker? Archie Bunker?
No Man.
Yeah, but Archie Bunker was a very different thing. Archie Bunker was like a comment on society. Excuse me, on a comment on society in a very different way. They used Archie as like the thing not to be, and all the people surrounding him were like.
Was he the guy who wanted to beat his wife?
Yeah, well, no, that was the honeymooners to the moon,
right,
Alice.
yes.
That was prior to Archie Bunker.
I love the on Futurama when Fry, they go to the moon exhibit and they show the honeymooners, and he's like, one of these days, bang, zoom, straight to the moon. And then Leela's like, I didn't realize early astronauts are so fat. And he's like, he's not an astronaut. And he was just using space travel as a metaphor for beating his wife. It was. One of these days.
I thought that
that's a messed up thing to say. What the
honeymoon, or the Archie was more like the Simpsons than Married with Children was like the Simpsons. Archie Bunker. He's kind of like Homer Simpson. He's kind of the archetype of Homer Simpson, like a dumb, lovable, angry, kind of stupid dude, but like everyone around him is really awesome.
Maybe. Yeah,
Whereas Married with Children was just a bunch of scumbuckets that just treated each other like dog shit. It's tough to watch. We weren't allowed to watch it growing up. I mean, I thought it was a great, entertaining show when I would watch it, but it was just cheap laughs.
All right. Michael Brown says, pesky constitutionalist here. Keep on keeping on, Timcast and crew. Everyone, support independent journalism. God bless you all. Shout out to Steve Baker. Best of luck, sir. Let's see what we got. I think we're going to have him back on the show to talk about what's going on, because this is nuts. For the FBI to be like, there he is walking up with a camera, filming and narrating what's happening. He's parading. It's like, come on, man.
Right.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
I suppose the argument from the left is that, but he was doing that while supporting J6. And it's like, he's not smashing things.
Yeah.
He's not fighting with cops. What you think about who he supports and doesn't support is immaterial to the fact that he is performing an act of journalism alongside other journalists.
And it's not illegal to say, I support the things that are going on at J6. If you're not actually doing the things, you're not breaking the law by saying, man, I don't think they did anything wrong. Like, you're maybe saying something dumb or something wrong.
One of the journalists who was alongside him who didn't get charged, well, he called them insurrectionists. So that's all it takes. Now you're a journalist.
Yeah.
Man, this country. All right. Federale Actual says, just like I won't delete Twix, I'll never stop listening to this cast. You got truth bombs dropping everywhere with the most based retired BG ever, and a rock god dropping F-bombs in the first hour. Luke Cast needs a rock god.
I've already said I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we didn't get into it, but X has banned misgendering.
Yeah. Specifically, repeated targeting, misgendering.
And that was always the rule. That was the original rule. The original rule that we all complained about was they said, you can't harass someone and misgender them. The rule was never simply calling someone the name would result in you getting banned. They always qualified it by saying it's repeated targeted harassment.
Yeah, and then
but they were still banning people for saying things like, "Oh, what did Zuby say?
Okay, dude.
Okay, dude," and they suspended him for it.
I think Megan Murphy said, "But a man's not a woman, though."
Yeah, Megan Murphy said, "Men aren't women, though," and she got banned.
She responded to someone, which was where the targeting comes in. It's like, oh. She responded to someone. But so how do you define harassment? Who gets to say what words you got to be called? Like, do I get a protected class too?
The rule
now?
says if you, as the victim, report it.
I just don't think it's going to fly for very long, but it's an interesting concept. I mean, harassment in general, you ban it. But
but like,
what the hell's harassment on the internet?
It's a slippery slope, man. There's no reason for this rule to exist, Elon. The rule does not make sense. I will stress this right now. I appreciate the things that Elon has done and is doing. But the idea of misgendering is inverted in the political spectrum. The left thinks it's misgendering to call someone who wants to use a pronoun something else, and the right believes it's misgendering if you call someone who is male, female pronouns, or vice versa. That's why the definition of misgendering, this is the problem with the rule in the first place. It shows a leftist woke bias. So you want to complain? Look, I'm going to say it right now. That rule being in place shows X is woke. Period. No questions. I don't care what Elon says. He's like, it's going to be targeted harassment. Doesn't matter. Elon, you woke. We're not going to get an argument of degrees of wokeness. There should not be a policy against calling someone the wrong pronoun. That's wokeness. X go woke.
Yeah, or calling someone any name. Like if I call Tim a monkey over and over and over on Twitter, he can block me.
And I'm going to say this right now. I will likely pull the Timcast News's official corporate pro account, and I will cancel Blue over this. I'm not kidding. There should not be a misgendering policy on any social media platform. So I will cancel verification. I will shut it all down. I'm over it. I get about $1,000 every 2 weeks, and who cares? I'm done. And I encourage everyone to cancel their Twitter Pro so long as X is saying they will shadow ban you for misgendering. Delete the policy or I'm done. I will shut it down first thing. I'll give it a weekend. We'll see what happens. Maybe they'll come out and apologize for doing it, but I'm going to terminate the Timcast corporate account. Do you know how expensive it is to run a business account on X? It is not $10. It's thousands of dollars. Thousands. And every time we add people, it is more expensive for a business to add a verified account than it is for the individual to verify their own account. We are spending a lot of money on X. And I will also say this. I am hereby canceling my pledge to put in the remainder of the $250,000 in advertising on X because of this. And I don't care if people are like, you said you were going to do it. I'm not doing it anymore. Done. They want to put in a misgendering policy. I will not pay for that. So I'm going to cancel that ad right now, actually. I did that ad last night. I'm pissed about this.
It makes sense. You know, if you're endorsing a company and you're spending money on their website, you're spending money to advertise and stuff. And one of the reasons is because of this kind of thing, this kind of commitment to free speech and stuff like that. I'm not sure what he means by harassment. I'm not sure if it is just like using the wrong pronoun one time or whatever.
Don't care.
I understand that clearly. But I don't, I'm not sure what it is, but that doesn't change the fact that the reason that people have embraced Elon so much is because he really does try to get it right about not censoring ideas. And I think that if you're saying you must use someone else's use the pronoun that someone else requests, if it is a requirement, then you're getting into regulating cognitive liberty. And cognitive liberty is what is at stake here. The reason that the leftists and the LGBT lobby demand that you use the pronoun is because they want you to conceive of them as man if they're a trans man or as a woman if they're a trans woman. It is about your liberty to think for yourself. The point is to make you think the way they want you to think. And there's no two ways about that. The point is to make you think what they want you to think, because the way we think is in words.
I love Elon, love what you're doing, a lot of it, man. But firstly, you're not the arbiter of free speech. No one has a control of what that is or how that works. So valiant effort. You cannot contain this thing. It's like the One Ring. So you got to free the code of that network and let other people spin up versions of Twitter that they can share your code with you.
The code is free. You can see their code.
You need all of it. You can't just, some of it is open, but it's not all of it. You need algorithms. You need the front end code. You need the back end, lots of different types of back end code. And that's freeing the speech, is giving that code to people so that they can make their own versions of the networks with their own terms that they can ban misgendering on, and then we'll leave that one and go to the one where they don't ban misgendering. That's the way you do it. You've got to release this beast, dude.
You don't do that with something you paid $44 billion for.
I mean,
that's just
Tim
not
just canceled a $250,000 ad read because of this stupid trying to control free speech.
I had committed last year, because of the good things they were doing, $250,000 in the first quarter. I spent $25,000. I launched live on the members show a $25,000 campaign for my account. So far, it is the ad run has spent $5,336. I am terminating it right now.
Yeah.
That's it, man. This is the next century. Is the evolution of what the First Amendment is. It's on the internet. It's the code base. You need access to code bases. That is freedom.
Yeah, I still don't think that. I'm still of the opinion that you can free the code, but most people aren't going to be able to read it.
That's likely now. Maybe next generation they'll have better understanding. Teach kids code. That's a big deal.
I think we should. I think we should teach kids how to farm.
Because yes, we should, and cook. No one network can like make the right terms. Terms are just kind of variable from person to person, and they should be because it's your company. You can have whatever terms you want. At
but
your
that's
company.
the point. That's the point. Elon, like he owns. He spent $44 billion on it. Like he's not going to just give the code away. I mean, literally. If he gives the code away, he's going to default all the people that he borrowed money to buy. He didn't just buy, he didn't just liquidate stuff to buy it. Like he's secured funding. He got financing from multiple people. That's how these things are done. He's just not going to. There will be no freeing of the code in X, so that way someone can make a competitor. That's just not going to happen. And there's no reason for no one would go to the competitor.
If the Twitter terms go haywire, then you would use the other service.
Someone just sent me something saying they got locked out for calling someone he. Someone's basically saying I got suspended for it.
For calling a woman he?
For referring to someone as a he.
This is like if I call somebody like a wolf man, am I going to get in some sort of misgendering trouble because it's a guy with red hair? But I was like, he looks like a wolf to me.
And topically, this is a problem, for X and for us and stuff like that. But this is obviously not the only attack on free speech in the West. You look at what Canada's doing, and that's serious stuff because they're talking about life imprisonment for hate speech, and they're even talking about preventative imprisonment if you might commit hate speech or something like that.
That's
so it's
new to me.
It is really, really, really crazy, the law that they're trying to pass in Canada. And that's something that is, you can go to jail for stuff that you post on the internet in England, and you can go to, I believe you could probably do the same in like New Zealand and Australia. So the idea that you should be allowed to say whatever you want, that's something that we still need to fight really, really ferociously for. I don't think there's been any significant change. As much as it's great that Musk bought the X and it showed potential, and hopefully this is not a consistent problem that they have, and things do get solved in a way that's satisfactory to people of our opinions. But there is no guarantee.
All right, well, I'm gonna have to log in, and I deleted the tweet. I don't know if that deletes the campaign. Probably not. I don't know how the campaign could exist without the tweet, but I'll still have to go into the back end and make sure I shut that down. And what I'd said was by the end of Q1, March, we don't do ad spending in January because you're doing budgeting. And then I was like, well, we didn't get through much in February either, so March will be a big ad spend for us. And I actually was talking to some of our clients and partners about the big ad spend we were going to do. It's canceled, officially canceled. And the Hill's reported on this. It's been reported far and wide. X has reinstated their misgendering policy. Feel free to do it, brother. I ain't giving you money for it. So that's it. Smash the like button if you like the show. Subscribe to the channel. Share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com. Click join us, because of the work we do is made possible thanks in part to viewers like you. And this means that everyone at Timcast will lose their verification badges. The Timcast News account will lose its golden badge. Then they'll likely derank and drop us. Don't know, don't care. I'm not paying for this garbage. Rumble exists. And, right now the big free speech competition is between X and Rumble. Rumble it is, I guess. I know we do the live show on YouTube, but I'm talking about if we're going to be considering anything for any kind of new platform, X is gone. So long as they have this misgendering policy in place, Elon will have to personally come out and announce it's been rescinded, revoked. Otherwise, I'm not interested. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL if you'd like. And you can follow me personally at Timcast if you're still using the platform. General Tata, do you want to shout anything out?
Thanks for a great conversation. I think we really hit on some key topics that we were able to drill down on. And thanks for pimping the book, Phalanx Code, where we actually, it's the struggle between big tech and the little guy. And so it's very apropos to end on that note.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can follow us on Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, the internet. And don't forget, the left lane is for crime.
That's right. When you gotta pass that dude, you're just breaking the law for a moment, and then you're gonna be right back to the speed limit. I promise.
This is real quick. This is the game. The big brands threatened to pull their ads off of X because he didn't have a misgendering policy. Okay, well, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not living in this world, man.
I think that's.
It makes sense.
Yeah. We should have him on the show. I know,
Sure.
obviously. And I had a Octagon 1975 on Twitter asked me to ask you, Tony, what's that ring represent that you got on?
This ring.
That's it.
That's,
I have to leave right now.
Oh, literally? Tim's, you're going out the door.
I'm leaving right now. So let's.
Well, maybe next time.
It's a West Point ring, 1981 graduate.
I'll talk more next time. Good to see you, man. Serge.
Yeah, I'm Serge. See you later. Have a good weekend.
I'm sorry. I'm just really pissed off over X right now. I'm losing my temper.
Dude, this is what
I'm so
happens
pissed
when
off.
people try and centralize authority. You always fuck it up. You cannot give power to one guy like this. It's insane.
Okay, we're gonna wrap it up. We'll go have a good time. It's Friday night. I got to get out the door. Go see family. Thank you all so much for hanging out. We'll be back Monday, and we'll see you all then.